Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, Estelle of Imladris. I am Kai, I use he, they, and she pronouns, and you're back for another episode of Seems Right, my show about costuming and storytelling. But first of all, let's talk about this world that we live in. In times of crisis, the best thing we can do is be there for each other. Through community organizing, being a listening ear, spreading joy, and talking openly about our shared values, we can build a strong community so that when crisis comes, we can act. Hurricane Melissa, a theoretically once-in-a-lifetime hurricane, made landfall on our neighbor Jamaica on Tuesday of last week and has ripped across Haiti, Cuba, and beyond. My heart goes out to all those who have been impacted, and I hope that in the coming days we can see strength of preparation and support in those places. If you want a place to start to help other people affected by Hurricane Melissa, I've assembled a few aid organizations that you can donate to in my chat here on Twitch using !Melissa. But also I will add those to the VOD information over on YouTube. You can also join in all kinds of charity efforts. Transplanter over the weekend raised money for hurricane relief as well. Anything we can do to care for our neighbors and those affected is so important. Only through raising our voices against climate change and the ongoing climate catastrophe going on around us can we have a future on this planet. Melissa was, in theory, once in a lifetime, but know that more of these are coming are becoming more and more common. I can read my own writing. Because of the harms done to our environment. To care for our communities, we must care for the world and continue to call for change from corporations, political, and global organizations. In caring for those right beside us, we must not forget the wider world that we live in. We should fight for the freedom of those oppressed around the world, especially those facing genocide and violent oppression. I stand with the people in Sudan, the DRC, and all oppressed peoples of the world in their struggle for liberation. I stand especially with Palestine, both Gaza and the West Bank. If you can do only one thing today, you can take action for Palestine. You can use !Gaza in my chat to find a few resources where you can send aid and other actions you can take to keep the pressure on for the future of Palestine and the Palestinian people. Taking action as a community can make a real difference. I am forever grateful to be part of such an amazing community who actually care about the world that we live in. Thank you so much for the follow. Thank you for being here with me live on Twitch or watching later on Twitch in the VODs or over on YouTube. Telling stories and talking about meaningful storytelling and having fun playing games and doing silly stuff is what drives me every day, and sharing it with you all is such a joy. If you're watching my streams, please consider following, and if you're able to, subscribing. I am an independent content creator, and all of your support helps me continue to tell stories and talk to you about what you can do to make your stories more rich and personal. Like today, the big thing today is helping you tell better stories. You can watch all of my streams available either live on Twitch or a week later I will be uploading them to YouTube. There's also video on demand available, the VOD available here on Twitch. Until it falls off because Twitch be like that. You can help support my work by following here on Twitch, subscribing if you are able. It does cost money. Or subscribing over on YouTube, which is free, and giving a little like, a little comment, a little cute "Hi, I enjoyed this" is very helpful to me over there as I continue to work towards monetization over on YouTube. What else is going on? Happy Indigenous Peoples Month. Every day should be Indigenous Peoples Month, but if I remember correctly, that started on November 1st. We owe a great debt to the Indigenous peoples of this world, and the least we can do is care for their culture and continue to make space for them to speak about the land that was theirs first. So land back and support Indigenous artists, creators, and voices. Yeah, with that, let's get into some Seems Right, shall we? So, today's subject, we are going to talk about character work for TTRPGs. Character work is a very specific phrase that is tied to acting, about character development and doing work that helps reflect better in your performance the character that you are portraying. But for TTRPGs, it's interesting because we make our own characters. We create the worlds that we are inhabiting. And so I'm going to do a little bit of just like how I go about my character creation process in a little bit more of an acting perspective and less in like character generation. If you want to watch like stuff about how to build interesting and compelling characters and mechanics, I have a 3-part series, I think, over in the VODs about building characters using mechanics. We go through and build a character using Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, and we expand out further and further in granular detail how I then develop this character for aesthetics, using the mechanics as part of the look. You can go check that out over any time. But today I'm going to talk about kind of the nuts and bolts of how I keep track of my characters, how I assemble that information, and then we're going to get into acting. We're going to talk about theories of acting, and how they can help you not only as an actual play performer, which obviously is a lot of what I do, but I think even down to just regular playing at a table, even if it's for a one-shot in a game store, any of these things I think can help make a character more robust and interesting and fun to play. Also because I love character work. It's like one of my favorite parts. So, from the top, as I am loath to do to all of you all the time, / I love doing this so much. A presentation that we're going to jump in and out of a little. I've got some fun examples. Character work for TTRPGs, another Estelle of Imlage's presentation. Thank you so much for the follow. Okay, so we're going to start first talking about character generation and kind of the difference between the character sheet, which I've talked about again at length. You can go check out the blank character sheet. It's one of my many videos over on YouTube. And that is where you get the mechanics of the game, where the characters like hit points live and their mechanical abilities, how much damage they can do. All of that kind of stuff lives in the character sheet, and that is something per system changes. I know. A presentation and seems right never happens. So all those tasty character mechanics for the game, they are the core part of a character in TTRPGs. It is one of the reasons why it stresses me out to have paper-only copies of character sheets. I take pictures of paper-only copies of character sheets because the character lives and breathes on that sheet. My preference is always digital because I can always duplicate it and make backups and do all kinds of stuff. But this is not just about character sheets. This is also about the character Bible, something that I make for every character that I play if I'm going to play them longer than 5 minutes, basically. And I'm going to talk to you about my character Bibles. I'm going to show you an example. I'm going to walk you through how to then use some of this for your own uses. Your character's truth lives in that Bible, and you compile it for yourself. It is a way to make your character feel real, lived in, and hopefully you can help figure out their decisions, choices, and themes, and put them into this Bible as a point of reference. So this is something that I often make for myself, but I will share with my GMs like 90% of the time, because it is a way for them to then see where my head is at with my character. And I consider it kind of a living, breathing document of who they are as a person outside of mechanics. The things that I include in my character Bible, a link to their character sheet. If there's any fun information about character mechanics, I include that in there. I'll show you some examples in a little while. A link to or an inclusion of a visual reference for the character, which includes things like an art reference sheet if you're getting art done of them, or a Pinterest board, a mood board, anything that inspires you about that character. I usually keep a pretty concise documentation of it attached to this character Bible so that I can access it quickly. A link to their playlist, because I make playlists for all my characters, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what that is, why I do it, etc. I love a playlist. Some basic like factual information like their name, their age, their height, all these things that help ground them as a physical being. Things about their personality. I usually write a couple paragraphs about like who they are internally and what their internal world looks like. And this might include things like drives and motivations. It might include things like how they think about their romantic partners, etc., etc. And I'll show you again. I have examples of this. What they look like. Their appearance, which is obviously, if you're watching the show, you know I love describing what characters look like and how it is actually a reflection of who they are. And so I usually have at least one pretty solid written description of their appearance. And this is also where that big beefy backstory goes that I love. So I'll talk to you a little bit in more detail about the theory behind how I craft backstories and all that stuff. And then for me, and in case my GM is reading this, I usually also pull out things like key information. And this is going to be like names of NPCs, important places, a timeline for events, that kind of stuff. So we're going to move away from the presentation for a minute, and I'm going to show you some examples of all of this. Let me open that up. And then we'll go back to the presentation in a minute. But I had to go delving into my records to find one that wasn't, a show that was currently running. That would be a giant spoiler. But I'll also pull out some other examples to show you all as well. So we're going to start with talking about just kind of the general wide idea that there's a lot of things that I'm going to be talking about in here that feel like facts. One of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten in actual play is that it is, it's improv. And to some degree, you want there to always be a little bit of that flexibility. I think best phrased by the singular C. Thomas, the dramaturg, producer, world-class performer C. Thomas, that says, strong ideas loosely held. So I say this because like these facts, some of them are immutable about this character. Some of them go all the way down to the core of who this character is. But anytime I write one of these, especially if I'm sending it to somebody or even just for myself, I know that these are things that should the story require it, should safety tools at the table require it, should any other factor involved in telling a collaborative story in TTRPGs require it, these ideas are mutable, they are changeable, and it is very important to hold on to that because collaborative storytelling, which is what TTRPGs are, is so much about the other people at the table as well. So if what you have created works against the wider part of your table, I do heavily encourage you to create these things, but then also be flexible in them. Be willing and ready to change them, not just for other people, but sometimes for your own inclination within the story. We're creating our own fiction, and you are not treading on some sacred ground to change something in your character if the story calls for it. So I'm going to show you some examples, but know that I, even in the moment, will go through and go, does this serve the story? Should I make this decision? Or maybe when it comes time to reveal that information, I might change parts of it. So long as you keep an internal truth for yourself, there is nothing wrong with doing that, so long as everyone is on the same page about it. So, hi Azra, thank you so much for the resub. So I'm going to show you Hoshiro. Hoshiro is from Bad House RPG's Sun and Chains series, which was part of the Kobold Creates program. We were playing Tales of the Valiant, so it's going to look very D&D 5th edition. Here we go. So here is Hoshiro. This is what a lot of my sheets end up looking like. So his name, I usually put pronouns in here and I didn't. His pronouns are he, they. And then these are actually links to his character sheet on Shard Tabletop, an art reference sheet, his Pinterest board, their Hero Forge that I made of them, and their Spotify playlist. And I do these as hyperlinks so that I can just open this document and get what I need. So this is a face of the actor that I use to like think about him, describe him, etc., and somewhat inspire my performance. So this is Tadanobu Asano. I always screw up his first name. As seen in so many things. I really like him. He's a very cool actor. He's been in a lot of stuff. Most recently, you might have seen him in Shogun as a piece of shit. But Hoshiro was, for me, a deconstruction of samurai and of like noble warrior tropes. He was a warlock Pact of the Reaper, and he was a half-elf human. So all of this information is right here. And then his character sheet, I can just open it, and you get to see it in Shard Tabletop as soon as it loads. And so I could just open the game this way and be like, oh, there's Hoshiro. Perfect. Same goes for the art reference sheet. This is what Bad House asks people to create for their characters. And so it has all the information that would be needed to create art, including like specific points of inspiration and reference, body and muscle types, color and textile types, all kinds of descriptions and things like that are all in here. And this would be when I talk about like writing what your character's appearance looks like. There's a lot of, I get very in the weeds, as you can tell. And here's his Hero Forge. And then I also have a link to the actual Hero Forge editor for this mini. I love him. So yeah, this is his art reference sheet, his Pinterest board. And as I make these things, I'm always thinking character first. Like, how does this tell the story that I want to tell? So the Pinterest board is one of the first places I go. Be very careful, as I always say, operating on Pinterest. It is full of AI. There are some ways to mitigate the amount of AI you are exposed to. But this is his Pinterest board. I sent this and that art reference sheet in case it was needed to the show. And then the Hero Forge. And then, of course, the playlist, which I will open. Maybe. There we go. So it's pretty short, but that's fine. There's no requirement for how long playlists are. And that's just the first part. That's just all that information that tells me so much about this character and gives me important referenceable things for the character right there at the top. The playlist, I just kind of want to like sidebar character playlists. I think character playlists are one of the most interesting tools for exploring who your character is. Sometimes it includes what kind of music they might like. I use it to explore their story and key moments and pull out ideas that maybe I need a touchstone for, which I'll talk about later on as well, of being able to pull out emotionally resonant moments. I put them in character playlists. I also put songs and images on character reference and Pinterest boards that are just mood based. So if there's a song that really particularly evokes a character, I might put that on the playlist as just a way of like getting in their mindset, getting into the like tone of their world and how they exist within it. And I will, before a show especially, like listen to their playlist and maybe even find specific songs within their playlist that might be particularly relevant for what's going on in the story as a way of getting into the mindset to play this character. Okay. And then I often put a picture of them just because I like visuals. I love a visual. So there he is. And then we have name, alias. This is going to be like the basic information. I usually play a lot of people who lie or have nicknames or code names. So I always end up having an alias of some kind. So his name is Hoshiro Masuda. Because this game was grounded very specifically in Asian diasporic storytelling, I made the purposeful choice to always have the kanji for the names and for the stuff that I was talking about, and so I was always grounded in the linguistic lineage of Hoshiro as a part of both like designing this sheet, but also to talk about it and to visualize it in my head, not as something being done in the English language, but something that exists kind of in a more ephemeral diasporic place where it is reflecting not only my English-speaking heritage, but the fact that large sections of my family and my past have spoken Japanese. And so his alias, Saigo-sama, which just means the last, is a title that I created for him. Dan Pixel started following me. Dan, I'm talking about Asian stuff. their pronouns, he, they, their height, which often comes up in games because I play with a lot of people who like playing very tall people. I thought it would be really fun to make him kind of middling on height, and I was right. Age, this can be anything from their date of birth, if there's like a date system in your world, all the way to like, I don't know, they're about 38, which is what I did here. But I also made the note that he looks like he's 28, and that's weird. I have ones that are confusing, like characters that have existed outside of time and that they're actually like 300 years old, but they look like they're 20. Like, I always try and note that stuff because it helps inform the description that I give to the rest of the table, even if they never see this information, and very often they don't. His hair is very dark brown, waist length. His eyes are gray-blue. Very often I will put orientation in there just to remind myself, because I do play characters of all kinds of... Thank you for the sub. Oh my goodness. Everyone, that's Cody Gonzaga Justice, who's a game designer. You should go look at their games, follow them. Also co-star that you'll see with me tomorrow over on Happy Jacks. So yeah, I put my character's orientation very often in there. It helps me kind of refine even just like flirting in character or not flirting, or in the case of Hoshiro, whatever weird sexual tension was going on between him and Song. Yes. That was Stella's character's name, Song. It's been a minute. The show ended way earlier this year. And then I love a section that's just like identifying marks. And I will often note like a little bit of detail, but because of the character design of Hoshiro, it ended up being very important to specifically know for myself where his tattoos are. And he has a lot of them. So he's got freckles, which I love giving my characters freckles. I have freckles, so it tickles me, especially when I'm playing a character that is overtly mixed, to be able to say, yeah, he's got freckles. And then this is all about putting that flavor in the mechanics. So this all ties to spells that he can do as a warlock and abilities that he has as a warlock. And so the location of it for me was part of the performance. And so I needed this to remember his physicality and the specifics of how he worked as a person. And sometimes you'll just be able to get away with like, oh yeah, they have a tattoo on their left butt cheek or whatever. But this was also the why of some of these tattoos. Like he had 2 Irizumi style arm and shoulder tattoos, which are those Japanese style ones that kind of curve in front of the shoulders around the collarbones and on the back as well. And the tattoos each reflected his 2 fathers. One of them was essentially my Japan analog, and one of them was my European white ancestry analog. And they both were warriors, and so it has like elements of both of his fathers imbued in each tattoo. So his Japanese analog father was Kofu, and Kofu was a blacksmith, and I made it super weird because it has Kofu's ashes in it, which people do. Dan, I can't come into my chat and say that kind of stuff. And then the right arm was a thundering serpent with lightning in clouds, that very like Japanese lightning in the tattoo, for his father Doran, because the world of Sun and Chains was one of post-colonial Asia. And so Doran, I specifically picked a very like Celtic-based name. I have a lot of ancestry from the like European, like northern England arcing through the northern European countries. So I wanted to include some of that as well. And in this world, that's kind of fucked up because they were invaders. Not unlike our world. So these both had meaning because his father, Kofu, his sword, Kofu's actual sword lived in this tattoo, and to summon it, because he was a warlock and he has a lot of the same abilities as a 5th edition Hexblade warlock, he would draw his father's sword straight out of the tattoo. And so I had to remember which arm it was on to just describe it correctly. And then there's a little one here that's the left wrist. That's 3 coins tattooed on the outside of his left wrist in a line from the wrist bone to the elbow. So very specific description. And what those were was the ability Thief of 5 Fates, which was Bane that I could just pull out of my pocket and do to people. But all of that was part of the flavoring, which again, if you want to know way more about that, I have a whole stream I did. But I do include this kind of stuff for scars, for birthmarks, for tattoos. The wide list of like reasons why people have permanent marks on their bodies. I include them in this section. And then I also include a face, like almost every single time without failure. Even if they're not like a humanoid type character, I often will still pick an actor. Because I love putting kind of a groundedness, a reality to it. So like I played a non-human character. I was like, this is just Tom Holland. This is Tom Holland as a not human for a show that isn't out yet. So I highly recommend doing it, especially if you're someone who like watches other performers and find inspiration in them. I also do on occasion use just like models. So Kay from Electric State, his face is a model because I was so intrigued by this model. Like he's a Irish Japanese model who has just like a very distinct look that the moment I saw him I was like, that's Kay. And so sometimes it's models. Very often though I will pick actors because they're actors that I've like seen work and I actually find inspiration in their work for those characters. Yeah, so that's just like the factual basics for this character. I don't think I did a personality one the way I usually do, so I'll find another one because we did a character questionnaire instead for this show that does kind of cover a lot of the same stuff. And then I did a whole breakdown of like naming and naming conventions, and again going back to that very grounded use of Japanese in this case. And specifically calling out so that our GM, which was Fabian, Rockets and Pens, could know what I was referring to when creating these names. And just like finding real touchstones. And I think that Hoshiro might be one of my most grounded in like reality character builds I've done in a very long time because so much of it was so personal. Like I named his blade in the same naming convention that like famous blades were named in samurai legends and things like that. So this is basically the personality stuff, and some of it is like culture, some of it is just kind of the what makes him tick. Like one of these questions is it's a very guild and like organization based politicking game, and says out of the available orders, guilds, and houses, where did you end up? And he was with the Black Letter Syndicate, and we had a whole world building document about these organizations. And the follow-up question is, was this your first choice? Because maybe it wasn't. And it says, if not, what was? And so you can see how these kind of get into the logic of the character. I'll show you a more normal example for me that's just like, yeah, this is just like how they are. But I do like this character questionnaire coming from the GM side. I am a big fan. And it includes things like, do you have a secret you keep? The answer is yes. Hoshiro is kind of a murderer for funsies. So then getting into, I was talking about key information. So this is NPC information directly given to the GM. Kofu and Doran are his fathers. Anessa is his childhood best friend. The Shinigami is the Reaper spirit that he is in Warlock Pact with. Ramil Yun is his ex. Kibu Sunisa is his boss. Blade Master Mui Yang is another member of the Black Letter Syndicate. Arfad I don't remember. Oh, yeah. He is a spy. There's some, like, rivalry there. So just, like, and then Song, which is Stella's PC. But all of this is in there not just for me, but in case my GM needed to reference any of this. It was all spelled out right here. I've done the same thing before. Because you can write really cool backstory stuff, but it's only useful if you can pull it up and use it in gameplay. And so I make everything as clear as possible. Name, pronouns, pronunciation, especially for a lot of these that are like not Western common names. And so it makes all of them searchable. And then also the same thing with locations. We've got his neighborhood that he's from, the city that his family's from, the village that his ex is from. And then we get into the backstory. And again, nothing that you make is useful in TTRPGs if you cannot reference and understand it. I love prose. I will write. So this starts on page 14. And this backstory that I wrote ends on page 18. So it's 4 pages of backstory. It is just dense prose all the way through. And this is how I tend to write my backstory stuff. But I do make a point of bolding and even hyperlinking now. I didn't used to do the hyperlinking, but I find it very useful. Important names, dates, places, etc. And so you can see Kofu and Doran, his fathers, bolded with their pronouns. And then if I click on Kofu, it takes me to Kofu in the page. And then bold and underlined the name of his father's sword, his Shinigami spirit, Anessa. And so you can see like the layers of usefulness. And then some of this is just like essentially just fiction for myself. The story of how he made his pact and all of that stuff is all in here. And if anything in here is important, I will then make a timeline. I'll make a timeline for my GMs. Because one of the things I always think is important and a little lost is when you're excited about a character, which I usually am. If this doesn't read as rapt and feral excitement, I don't know what to tell you. But I also understand that the GMs only have so much time. And so I think part of the reason why long backstory and character documents have been villainized in TTRPGs is because A, there's an expectation that your whole backstory is going to end up in that game. It won't. It's not fair to everybody else. And also not everyone's going to have the same time, ability to dedicate to that game or passion that you might have for it. And so I think that's a lot of the stigma on it. But also I could be sending my GM a 20-page backstory page and going, read this, memorize it, because this is the game I'm playing. And that's not fair because, again, it's collaborative. And so one of the important things that I keep in mind is I always tell my GMs, I have no expectation for you to read all of this. I broke out the important information. If you have any questions, you can let me know. Because this goes back to the GM is also writing a game and telling a story. The other people at the table are also telling a story. So having space for the GM to not have time to read 20 pages makes sense because that's how we should be kind to each other. And so I always leave the door open to say, you don't have to read this. And yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Cody. So I use this for me, and if I need to like remember a moment or something like that, I can go back and reference this. But also, I didn't expect Fabs to read this whole thing from top to bottom. We had a conversation about it in a 0 session, and we got it all set. And I said, like, here's the important stuff. If you need to reference it, you have access to it. I did the same thing to Dan, who's in chat right now for our current game, Circle of Seekers and Sinners, also on Bad House, because I will write a long backstory. And then the other thing that I use is a record keeping for me. So we've talked about using mechanics as character And so this is all of his abilities and where they are on his body, because he is a thing that I created called an inksmith. So all of his spells come out of his tattoos, because I wanted to interrogate the Japanese taboo of tattooing and use it as magic. And so his Beyond Sight, which is basically 5e Devil's Sight, he has a facial tattoo about it. His Familiar, which is usually a raven, lives in a feather tattooed behind his ear. I had a very specific description of Mask of Many Faces and how it's an Oni mask tattooed on his ribs. And so in order to keep track of all of that for me, because I made these very specific choices, I have record of it here. And that's just one character Bible. And I do this for everybody. I changed my format about a year and a half ago to this, around when I made Hoshiro. But all in all, they're mostly like this. I'm going to pull open one that I'm not going to show you the whole thing of, but I will show you a better example of the personality section, because it's for an ongoing character. That's the wrong window. I had him. But I keep all of these also on a Google Drive, because that's how all of my games are organized for me. Here he is. Merrick, my beloved. From the Doomsayers over on Taino Tales. I'll zoom through him really quick so you could just see, again, it's more of the same. I think I've opened him on stream before. Here he is. Merrick, demigod of wasted potential, my beloved. And again, I'll put things like their real name if it's super important. His real name is Patroclus. Yes, that Patroclus. His other name is the Hungry Wolf. I started doing this and I really like it, putting the actor, the model, whoever appear, and then their sheet, art ref sheet, Pinterest, and playlist. Again, a picture. That's Oscar Isaac from Inside Llewellyn Davis. The regular information, the Hero Forge. And then this is my more like traditional appearance description. I'll do something like this, a big flat block of text. And then the core things, again, I pull out and I bold them. So lean, athletically built man, square features, a strong brow, beautiful lips that refuse a smile. These things, you can use them to explain and introduce your character in the game. You can refer to it, especially, I love repeated description, especially over long periods of time. Like, obviously, don't just say, like, beautiful lips that refuse a smile every time you're talking about his lips. This isn't Twilight. We can expand beyond a single descriptor. But every so often, you can refer back to it as a character motif. Like, for Zynon, a black flat-brimmed hat is a very specific thing, partly because his hat changes, but at the end of the day, it's still a black flat-brimmed hat. So I love a description like this, and this is part of, if not the jumping off point for my character descriptions in game. I will usually break them apart and turn them into narration and dialogue, but in their genesis, this is what they look like. It is his clothing styles, his either if he's got one look for the entire show, that one look, or his like fashion sense. And this it says he disguises a muscular form beneath oversized fashion of the 80s, while not being particularly shy that he's quite toned. And so it helps me kind of guide my way through what he looks like. And then here's the giant list of scars again, information about that. And then personality. Oh, here's Achilles, because I had to put Achilles in here. But here's again, this is I think the scariest of my bold underline stuff, because I went really deep into the Iliad and Greek myth for this. So it's like, here, Chris, our GM, here's all of the NPCs I talk about. Yes, all of these NPCs and one PC are mentioned in here, because the one PC is Hector, aka Hector of Troy, aka the guy that killed him. Played by the singular Otso Spirit Bear Valiant Dorian. And Again, here's those notable places that are important to him, both from his past and in the present. And then, because his backstory was so long, I made a bullet point bolded version of it in timeline. So that Chris could get all of the information without having to read all of this. Because all of this is backstory. Yeah. So that personality section is kind of broken out in this, but it looks very often for me a lot like the, so who is he now? This is the personality section for this, where I broke it out because he's a very complicated and fractious character. But often it looks like the appearance thing where it's like, this person is, what? I'm going to open one that I won't show you because it's full of spoilers, but I will read a part of it, because it's for a current show. And I like my secrets. But the personality, one of the personality things I wrote recently was cocky and mercurial. He dances around the trauma and pain of his life by making people smile and tirelessly pursuing his life's mission. And within that is folded acting objectives and like proper nouns of people that this character cares about and things like that, so that I can reference it later for the stuff we're going to talk about after break. So yeah, that is kind of the core of my character Bibles. I would say for anything that's going to last longer than like 3 episodes, they all end up being about 10 to 20 pages. I would say that's way more than anyone needs to do. Character generation is not homework, except for making a character sheet. But on the acting side, all of this stuff to me is how I remember 3 years later, information about my character that I created in 2022. It helps on shows that maybe do have time to get more intimate into character introspection. It helps my GMs have the information of what I'm thinking about. But also it makes it a conversation, because then when we're talking about character backstory stuff in, the midway point of a 10 episode series, the GM and I can have a conversation about stuff I've already sent well in advance, and so then we can come back and talk about it when it is relevant. Another thing I think is important to add here also is there's nothing wrong with doing none of this. There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing none of this. This is how I work, and how my performances have things that I care about as an artist in them. Things like very personal, tactile details about a person. But also, I know plenty of people who create their characters on the fly, and I've done it a few times. It's not my favorite. I prefer to have this kind of meditative time to kind of puzzle piece a character together. But there's also nothing wrong with doing it that way. And I've seen some incredible performances come out of characters that don't have giant character Bibles and in-depth playlists and things like that. So don't think that this is a gold standard. Don't think that this is the only way to do things. But also, this is how I work. And that's the only thing I can speak to. Let's see here. So that's all of that. A little, I'm going to circle back to character playlists, and I wish I had a better example of this that isn't full of spoilers. But one of the things I love doing also, I'm going to see if I can open it and not show you everything, because I do have a way that I think about playlists in particular that is less about music and vibes and a lot more actually like a grounding exercise in the character. Where is it? Arc 1. Okay, I can show you this part. This is not a spoiler. So for Transplanar, going way back in time, I have one of these for each arc, for each playlist. And so the title directly mirrors the Spotify playlist that's available on the Discord. Every arc I do make a new playlist for Zynon. But specifically, when I make these playlists, I also then go through and for myself, write kind of a snapshot of how it ended up on this playlist. why, what it represents. So the first song on Zynon's very first playlist is a song called To Be Enchanted by a group called Sleeping at Last. I'm obsessed with this band. I probably put at least one Sleeping at Last song per arc on a Zynon playlist. And usually what it encompasses is the name of the song and the artist, a piece of lyrics, if there are lyrics to the song, that specifically call out to me from this particular thing. And so the quote here is, "You're alive, quit acting like you're dead," for a guy who definitely does act like he's dead. And then a small bit of text, a little taste of why. And so the text here says, "A song about where we begin. Or is it where the story herein ends? Zynon exists both as a formidable force of will in the present and a ghost of who he was when he was at home at all times." The song has a play on, is the narrator a ghost, or are they speaking to a ghost? And if they are a ghost, is the narrator they're speaking to alive? And so the last of it says, which is the narrator of this song and which is the ghost is up for debate. And so this is a song I go back to often, specifically for this thought. And I will go back and read these when I am especially like stepping away from a character, whether it's because you're in a game that takes break like Transplanar does. You want a tarot card pull? Fantastic. I will do that in just a minute. Maybe it's a story that you just don't get to come back to for a long time because some, like, Lord knows my home game has taken like whole months off and things like that. So having a touchstone for where your character is about specific things, whether that's about their backstory, about individual characters. I use playlists as a way to kind of like timestamp and record their feelings about things. And it's why I really like them. In the case of especially Zynon's Arc 1 playlist, but I've done this a few other times, I will also put them in a chronological order to some degree. So if for those of you following at home about the Chaos Protocol, Zynon's Arc 1 playlist, half of it is just his backstory. It is music that I listen to even now to get ready for the game because they're songs that haven't gone away, that are a part of who he is fundamentally. They are backstory character playlist as much as it is a like the vibe and spirit of Arc 1. Yeah, so playlists can be lots of stuff. Sometimes it is inspiration and vibes. Sometimes it is like emo feelings. I've definitely made plenty of ones that are just emo feelings. But also like sometimes they are timestamps. Yeah. Cody is talking about how like some of the music they put on their playlist, some of it is like lyrics, but the music behind it fits. I have done some of that. I am a notoriously unwell playlist maker where I'm like, they use a proper noun in this song, I can never listen to this song again. So there's some of that. And like one of the things I definitely struggle with is I play a lot of characters that have queer, especially like non-traditional heteronormative nuclear family parenting. And so like for Zynon, trying to find songs that don't say father is always a trick because I'm listening to real country music often, and a lot of them are very heteronormative. And so it's taken a long time for me to deal with that, or I just find an instrumental version of the song, and very often that is what I do. So if there's a song that's a really like, oh wow, the lyrics of the song really fit, and there's like one lyric that I don't like, I might find an instrumental version for a song. But that's me because when I am using them as prep, which I'll talk about a little later, to get in my character's headspace, I hear the lyrics to music very clearly. I know that's not a thing that everyone does. And so if there is a lyric out of place, it will actually stick in my mind as like, this doesn't fit this character. And so some of it is to safeguard future me when using the music as prep. Yeah, okay, I'm shuffling for Puck. So let's do that. Let's get over to that down camera. We've got my amazing Wild Unknown Tarot deck. I'm going to give it a cut. I've been sitting here shuffling this whole time. All right, Puck, this one's for you, friend. Daughter of Wands. So pretty. I think I've drawn this exact card for you before, or for someone else in the stream, because it's the one that has cherry blossoms on it. Daughter of Wands. I swear I shuffled. Thank you for the hydrate. Anyways, that's wild. Daughter of Wands. Visionary, passionate. The Daughter of Wands is a free spirit, a truly visionary creature. She usually waits until later to settle down or start a family, as she's busy with her career. She can be stubborn and much stronger than she looks. As with all the Wands family, the daughter makes a dangerous enemy. This card can also represent a woman going through a transformation or spiritual breakthrough. Get singed, I say affectionately to Puck. This card is sing. That's so strange. Yeah, this is a card about being who you are and it being a strength. And to not worry about some of the other stuff. So, I adore you, Puck. I hope that this card reinforces your strength as who you are. And with that, I think this is a great moment to get up, stretch, pet your pets if you got them, get a snack, take your pills if you got them. And I'm going to come back with more water, and we're going to talk more about the other side, which is the actual performing, of which we're going to get into actual methods of acting, and I'm very excited about the next part. So I'll see you all in about 10 minutes. Hello, everyone. Welcome back from break, and I am Kai. This is Estelle Van Ladris, and I owe you a picture of a cat. I pulled up a very special one since I had a second. This is the very first photo I have of Rigby as our pet the day we adopted him. Look at him. He looks the exact same. He's still tiny baby man. Itty bitty tiny baby boy. There he is. Little guy. Yeah, I was on Pet Finder. Casually, which you should never do. And I saw a picture of a black cat up for adoption by a private listing, which is very rare on Pet Finder. Most listings on Pet Finder are for rescue societies and humane societies. And all I saw in there was a picture of a little black cat that looked a lot like Watson. And a couple of days later, I was in the Pasadena Humane Society waiting for them to process him because I had gotten in contact with his previous owner who had to surrender him to the Pasadena Humane Society. So he's 3 in this photo, even though he looks like he's a kitten. And he's my itty bitty baby son. I saw him with my own eyes and I said, this cat's coming home with me. And then he hid underneath the Humane Society person's desk that we were in their office, or in an office with, because he's small and scared of everything. And my good baby son. So yeah. There he is. You can always redeem those channel points for pictures of my cats, maybe the cats themselves, as well as tarot card pulls like we did before break. Be showing you the dice that are on my desk, of which there's always new and interesting dice coming through my desk. Yeah. So that's that's that. We're going to get right back into it now, though. I have more presentation, and we're going to get into some acting theory, which I'm very excited about. So, for those of you who don't know this about me, I do in fact have a bachelor's in theater, specifically theater and performance studies. So I've studied all of these to some degree. It's been maybe a while on some of them, but we're not going to get too deep in the weeds on some of them. My goal is to go through and show you some methods of acting, and then I'm going to go into a few in hopes that it can illuminate new and interesting ways to pursue character and performance through TTRPGs. So the first traditional acting method is classical acting. It's big, dramatic, theatrical. It's really good for classical theater, like Greek tragedies, Shakespearean stuff. It is the way that acting was taught forever. It is not really the way that acting is done now, unless you're doing panto. Okay. Method. Don't do it. Don't do method acting. Don't do it. Not enough people hate on method acting, so I'm going to hear loudly. In TTRPGs, because it's what my character would do as an entire acting method. I hate method acting. It is the physical inhabiting of the character without sense of boundary for the self of the actor. Famous examples include Robert De Niro driving a cab for 12 hours a day for Taxi Driver, Daniel Day-Lewis catching pneumonia, shooting Gangs of New York because he wouldn't wear an insulated coat because he thought it would dampen his performance. No, that's not method acting. That's being dumb. Or spending a lot of time for kind of no reason. So, yes, exactly. Jason in chat, using his holiday card list to send raw fish to everyone. People have used method acting as an excuse for some of the worst behavior in the arts. It is also when everyone else is not living in the diegesis around you and you are like, I cannot do something because my character would never. It's like, okay, but we all have to go on lunch now. So you're going to sit over there and cook in your own juices while we go eat. I really don't like method acting. Alternatives to method acting include doing just research and being normal about it. Doing activities that your character has done or would do isn't bad. The example about De Niro driving a taxi cab isn't on its face bad, but it's when you spend months doing it. I love a firsthand experience. It's really good for research. I have actually done many of the things in some way that I really get into the nitty gritty with about my characters. Like you've all heard me talk on here. I was an archer. I used to teach archery. I love talking about archery. I've done a lot of gardening, not large scale farming, but a lot of working with the dirt. And I know a lot about crops and all of that kind of stuff. So when I talk about that kind of stuff, it is coming from a place of experience and research. And for TTRPGs especially, because we create the stories that we are telling, one of the best things you can do is draw on your personal experiences to tell a story. So build aspects of yourself into your characters. Build hobbies and things that you have done into your characters. If you love reading, put that into your character. Talk about why your character loves reading and root it in things that you've actually experienced yourself. You do not have to send rats to people playing your partners in games to do the research of knowing that that's creepy and weird. And also, don't do harm to yourself or others to create art. In general, I kind of don't care what your reasoning is. If you're doing harm to others, even if it's in the name of art, it's still doing harm to others. It just makes you an asshole. So don't do it. Do literally anything other than method acting. That's my tirade against method acting. Don't do it. Just don't do it. Okay. Now we're going to talk about an actual workable. Oh, thank you so much, Lamia, for those cheers. Oh my God. We're going to talk about something healthier now. We're going to talk about an actual acting method, and we're going to get into the meat of this. So Stanislavski, was a Russian theater guy who created this thing called the Stanislavski system of acting, and he would teach other actors this method, and it is largely considered kind of the grandfather of modern acting theory. And then we're going to talk about a follow-up to Stanislavski, because there's going to be a thing in here that you're going to go hey, that sounds bad. You're going to be right. Okay, so Stanislavski's system, a method marrying classical techniques with more improvisational and narrative-based emotional techniques. Stanislavski even said, though, create your own method. Don't depend slavishly on mine. Make up something that will work for you. But keep breaking traditions, I beg you. Love Stanislavski. So here are a bunch of points within Stanislavski's work, many of which are still taught and used today. So the first one being root yourself in your character, the circumstance of your character. By answering these questions and keeping the answers in mind as your character, in your mind, you will center yourself in your character, both in character generation when you're making a character sheet and for every session, recording, etc. So these seem really straightforward. Who am I? Where am I? When is it? What do I want? Why do I want it? How will I get it? And what do I need to overcome? These seem really straightforward, but these are the heart of every scene, every performance, and every drive in everything you've ever watched. Dan has already read ahead. I know that Dan is also well read in these exact things. The magic if. By answering these questions for your character, you can also do this thing called empathizing without having to actually be your character. So if you can answer these questions for your character, you'll come a lot further into stepping into their shoes in a meaningful way. The magic if. Put yourself in the character's shoes and ask yourself how you would feel/react in their situation. Ask yourself, what if this was me? And then you can expand on that using context to connect yourself to their situation, to the character itself, to the scene, to your scene partners, to their motivations. So say you are playing a character that wants something that above table, you're aware, you're never going to get that. You want to become a god in one session in for level 1 D&D game. Your character doesn't know that. And so root yourself in what they want. They want to become a god. How are they going to go about it? Well, what is their circumstance and what do they have at their disposal to make that goal happen? What is their hurdle? Maybe it's that they're a level 1 D&D character that basically has the stats of a villager. And pursue that with honesty by answering those questions of what do I want? Why do I want it? Maybe it's because I'm deeply insecure and I think that being a god is the right answer. How will I get it? Well, I'm going to convert every single person that I see to my religion. And what do I need to overcome? Maybe that I'm super off-putting and doing that is really annoying. But at the end of the day, if that's the drive and the character that you've created, especially with approval of everyone else at your table, like that's a viable answer. So then you know what you want, how you're going to go about getting it, what the barriers are that you're going to constantly face in trying to achieve that goal. And so, yeah, oh God, Uta Hagen. I don't get deep into that in this because that's a lot more theory and a lot less actionable stuff, but, okay. And then you can complexify it by considering their circumstance, their lives, their desires, needs, and objectives. So, commonly, one of the best things you can do is look at a character in their totality, go back to that massive character Bible and go, wow, my character has faced extreme, like poverty. How does someone who's faced extreme poverty react in this situation? Even if you yourself has not experienced extreme poverty, you can read about it. Again, going back to research, I love research. You can make a different choice for your character if it's something that's so fundamental that you're worried you can't authentically portray it. You can talk to people. That's also research. I have the great privilege of being able to have conversations with people outside of my experience and say like, hey, this is a thing that my character has experienced. A, how do you feel about me portraying it? B, what is a way that I can authentically portray this? And C, is there stuff in it that you would think would make this inauthentic or even mean or cruel for me to portray? And going back to, is it my story to tell? Always the question on this channel. So they, you can use that series of questions, that magic if, to situate yourself within your character. Another like core old Stanislavski thing that even in the later part of his life, he was like, I don't know if this is a good idea. I've got another section to follow up on this, but going back to empathy, doing things that are rooted in your own experience, emotional memory, which is something we talk about very often in TTRPGs, is play what you know. I don't recommend rooting your character in especially like trauma and your real world like hurts and harms that you've experienced in reality, unless you are doing it specifically with the like mindfulness and care of a table that has fully bought into that being a choice. So I have done this before, but with knowledge and understanding that that is what we were exploring within the story. But just willy-nilly going around and portraying a character that maybe you've been in an abusive relationship. Don't make a character that's been in an abusive relationship going, well, I can authentically portray this. Unless you're going to do it to explore and you do it with permission, TTRPGs, while they can be useful therapy tools, are not therapy. And it is not on the rest of your table to hold you in that abusive moment unless you talk to them about it. And of course, everyone brings their own shit to a table. That's fine. But if you're going to pursue it as a core part of your character, that needs to be a conversation, because otherwise it becomes unfair to the other people who are there to maybe just tell jokes and have a good time, you know? So conversation in this particular case goes a long way, but emotional memory is something we all have inside of ourselves. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't use any of your real lived personal experiences. If I took my real lived experience out of all of my characters, obviously I wouldn't be a performer. I would probably just sit in a game store and say I rolled a hit 1,000 times. But I root them in things that aren't traumatic and painful, because that can cause a lot of harm. The idea of specifically emotional memory is tapping into your specific personal experiences to draw on to create emotional reactions within your character, within your performance. So the idea that like, oh, I need to cry, so I'm going to remember that time that, you know, this really upsetting thing happened in my life. Stepping outside of the fiction to do so as well, and going like, well, my character's partner just dumped them in a really upsetting way, so I'm going to go back to the time that I was dumped in a really upsetting way, and I'm going to relive that so that I cry in this scene. Don't do that. So yeah, Turtle Key, you're talking about someone who actually tried to do this. I don't recommend it. I have alternatives for you later on. But know that it's like the fine line between your lived experience. Like, I can't separate my queer experience out from my characters. And there are moments of frustration and upset within that. But exploring it in a healthy way is saying like, hey, I'm gonna play with this thing. I'm talking about, you know, like a trans allegory here. I'm talking about self-exploration, but I'm not then going back into times that I have been harmed in those situations to find those memories. Usually if you're seeing me cry on stream, it's about my character. It's about their life. It's not about me. I'm not centering myself in those moments to tell that story. So yeah, we're going to come back to this. Remember this when we get to Chekhov. Objectives. I love having an objective in a scene. A super objective is a character's overarching goal, desire, or thing that they're pursuing for the whole story. This is going to be like, if you haven't noticed already, textually in the Chaos Protocol, Zionan's search is for home. I've said it 1,000 times. I cannot say it any clearer. I've played characters that their entire goal is to feel safe. Their entire goal is to is for vengeance, is for like acts of resistance, and sometimes it's sabotage. It could be anything, but their super objective it tends to be something really big. Usually it's an idea. It really varies, but having an overarching objective goes a long way, and those can change. I've played characters that they kind of get what they want, and then the question is always, oh, what now? What do I do now? People don't just stop having objectives when they accomplish one. So having an objective in mind and kind of being able to verbalize it for yourself can go a long way. And then you also need those in scenes, in smaller moments. So identifying your character's goals, wants, and intentions, even in a single session, even in a single scene, can go a long way, especially because most good scenes are a meeting and either clashing or marrying of objectives between characters. So if, say, my character has the goal of eating dinner, and they walk into the kitchen and another character is already cooking dinner, that is the meeting of two objectives, because their objective was to cook dinner and my objective was to eat dinner. So that works out. And then we can have a scene about how, oh, look at these two characters are meeting on common ground, versus one of my characters wants to burn down a building and one of the other characters wants to inhabit this building. Those are at odds with each other, and that is also objectives that have interesting kind of conversation, and the scene ends up becoming about, I want to burn down the building and you want to be inside of it, so what are we going to do about this problem? And that's a real world conversation, even if it isn't us as players saying, hey, I want to burn down this building. It is then a conflict that we can empathize with because we have conflicting goals. And you keep those as the North Star in every scene, in every session, as a way to guide what you want from your character. One of my tips here is to play games that use these kind of objectives as part of gameplay, such as Starscape or Candela Obscura. The way to level up in Candela Obscura is to pursue a certain set of objectives that are intrinsic to your character's playbook. In Starscape, you create a singular objective for your character every episode, every session. So you set the objective of, like, I want to drink wine with this character, which is an objective that I created more than once while playing Starscape because my character loves wine. But to complete that, then you level up. And so having goals that are kind of above table in that they are mechanically beneficial for you to pursue them, but having them be integrated into who your character is. So for Starscape, you create your own. But in Candela Obscura, one of mine is just act weird. I'm playing an occultist. He's just weird, and I do weird stuff all the time, which means that I pursue that objective even unconsciously because of the character I've made. But playing that and allowing you to keep that in mind as the player gives you a goal for your character as well. Oh, hey, it's Gina. Oh my goodness. The award-winning singular Gina has followed me. Welcome in, Gina. Hi. Okay. Yeah. Cody's talking about how a lot of games, there's a lot of playbooks that have primary motivations in their character arcs that help you level up. And pursuing those is really important. It's also an Electric State, the game that Cody and I are playing right now. You have to pursue either your flaw or your dream to level up in that game. Okay, so the next one is subtext and themes. In traditional acting, a lot of it is about pursuing the subtext of the text that you are playing, the actual script that you are working off of. But for actual play in TTRPGs, you create your own subtext, you create your own themes. And so you get to decide what those themes look like and how to pursue them. One of the things that I always ask myself is specifically seeking out the subtext of individual relationships. Seek out the subtext of character-to-character relationships. Like, is this mirroring another character in my character's life? Am I putting my ex onto this new person, which people do all the time? Is this relationship that wasn't intended to be, is it becoming romantic? Because that becomes then a different subtext than, we are like siblings, that kind of stuff. And that also helps you then have above table conversations if you're always pursuing and looking at what the subtext of a relationship is. So that you can have those conversations above table and go like, hey, person playing this other character, I think that I'd be interested in turning this into a romantic relationship. Or how do we feel about this not becoming a romantic relationship? That kind of stuff. Another thing to look for is allegiances. A lot of times, especially in TTRPGs, you're part of a group. You're part of an adventuring party or an organization or whatever. And one of the things you can always pursue in the subtext is, what does that loyalty mean? Why are you loyal to this group? Because everyone has a reason for buying into an organization or a religion or a whatever. So is loyalty to a group actually loyalty to only one person, perhaps? Maybe there's only one person that got you into this faith or whatever it is. Is my loyalty to this actually just self-serving? Like, am I a part of an organization not because of ideals, but because maybe I'm getting what I need out of it? And those are things that you can explore without having to like go onto a whole textual quest about it. You can just be like, yeah, this is how this relationship stands for my character. And again, you can record these things in a character Bible and be like, hey, my character doesn't like this organization that we work for. I don't trust the captain because I have problems with authority, that kind of stuff. And you can always pursue the themes like truly doggedly, and it always makes to me a better story if you know generally the themes that you are looking at, because then everyone's talking the same language. You can pursue within the framework of your character's motivations and the mechanics, but also just with each other around the table. If you are going to make space for a scene, say around a campfire during a long rest, you can make a point that that scene is going to be about, say your entire game is about finding home. So then it's the characters talking about, oh, what was your home like? Why do you miss it? Why do you want to make a new one? And it allows you to pursue the heart of the story you're telling, which that's what makes like more scripted work. It's one of the things that drives it so well is that as a viewer, as a consumer, you are absorbing a linear narrative, and themes help create that linear narrative. So always pursue the subtext and the theme like it is your objective as a performer. I really think that it's very helpful. Speaking of, through line of action, keep an eye on your character's intentions and goals, as well as your goals and intentions for them, and pursue them. Pursue them like it's your job. Don't forget, you may have days, weeks, or even months between sessions, so keep good notes. I take session to session notes, and if I have an intention at the end of a session, I will put it in my notes and I will highlight it so that when I come back to my notes, the first thing I see is, hey, last session, you were going to draw your gun and shoot this person. And so then I have that top of mind when I go, oh, when we come back, is it cool with everybody that I'm just going to shoot this guy? And then you can have those conversations before you jump in and throw all of the GM's planning into absolute chaos. I have done this many times, and then I'll take that intention and I'll check in with the GM and be like, hey, is it cool if Zynon follows the Forge Master? I think that that's the direction that I want to take what's going to happen next. And then maybe I might get dissuaded because, not even because it's a bad idea, but because maybe it doesn't serve the story. Or maybe I'll get told, go, do it. That sounds like a great idea. And then you get your ass kicked. What? So yeah, keeping your intentions for yourself from session to session is also so important. But also, it's important to keep intention for your character consistent. So one of the things that I always kind of try and track is where a character is coming from, especially if they're walking out of a scene that wasn't played in real time, where they might be intending to go. So like maybe they're walking through a place and then get caught into a scene. Don't forget that they weren't walking into that scene, perhaps. They could have been trying to go to the bathroom. And if I get stopped to have a conversation while I'm trying to go to the bathroom, I'm going to be like, hey, I'm going to be right back, and then excuse myself from the scene for a little while, as maybe even having a reason to leave the scene for a little while to allow other things to happen in my character's absence. Another thing is that we're always iterating as humans about who we've recently spoken to, the conversations that we've been having. And so think about what your character's been hearing and who they've been talking to and what kind of perspectives they have been imbibing. So maybe they have been in a vacuum and only talking to their party, or maybe they've been, I don't know, home with their family and they're thinking about the things that their family told them, or maybe they've been, I don't know, deep in training, and so they're thinking very business about the work that they've been doing. And then on top of it, always think about how they feel about these things. Like the bathroom example is kind of funny, but also like, hey, if someone impedes me from going to the bathroom, I'm gonna be like, fucking move. I have to go. Or I'm hungry. I need you to move because if I don't eat in like 10 minutes, I'm gonna get real grumpy. And I always try and keep those things in mind for my characters to give them motivation in life outside of just, hello, I've entered this scene. Okay, now we're going to talk about Chekhov. So Chekhov was a student of Stanislavski. And specifically, we're going to circle back to emotional memory and why you shouldn't use that unless you are explicitly doing it. One of the core things, I'll read the whole thing. So I read this amazing breakout from a classical singer about Chekhov's work and acting techniques, and I drew a lot from that because I thought it was very interesting. But she summarized it as a psychophysical approach that offers direct and efficient tools to evoke and stimulate the imagination, feelings, and atmosphere. So it's the idea that as an artist, we don't have to root ourselves in our own feelings. We can imagine them. We can just make that shit up. Chekhov is very famous for Chekhov's gun, of course, which is the thing, you put a gun on the mantelpiece and the whole play plays out in front of it, and all you're doing is watching that gun going, when's someone going to use that gun? Because there's a gun there. And then the most satisfying thing you can do is then have someone touch it at the end, and the gun happens. Another core part of Chekhov's work, though, comes from his experience exploring emotional memory with Stanislavski and how it really fucked him up. And so he was exploring ways to step outside of using his own personal experience to create resonant storytelling through acting. So his work is often meant to stimulate emotional responses without tapping into personal trauma. Yes, you are correct, Erica. So the thing we're going to do today, we're going to talk about the four brothers: feeling of ease, feeling of form, feeling of beauty, and feeling of entirety. This will be on YouTube later. Yes, absolutely. In a week from today, it will be live on YouTube. The first one is feeling of ease. This is the primary condition for a performance and an antidote for nervousness. So the reason why you'll see a lot of actors like warming up isn't just to warm up their muscles, which is part of it for sure. But it is also about creating and centering yourself into a place of ease and performance. So being at ease means being relaxed and poised, but still responsive. So not asleep. You're not unconscious. You're present with the other people that you are performing with in the story you are telling. And in case of TTRPGs, the mechanics you are using in the world and your GM, you are actively participating. But instead of being like tense and ready to respond with fear or anxiety, it then makes it easier to come from a place of like, what would my character do? What is the thoughtful response here? Easy ways to create a sense of ease include pre-game relaxation methods such as breathing techniques and self-care. So standard on a Transplaner Saturday, we do breathing techniques before every stream. And every single Saturday, I make eggs as both a character exercise because Zayden loves eggs and was a bird farmer, but also because then I know I'm fed. I've done my little ritual where I've thought about what it means to cook and care for other people. And it's very grounding for me as just like a self-care technique in general. It also helps you be present with your castmates as yourself. So this goes back to boo method acting. But being present with your castmates means that you can create an atmosphere. You're telling a story for each other. My primary audience is the people at the table with me. And so doing things like check-ins when you just sit down in a call before a show and just be like, hey, how are you doing, castmate? How's your week been? What is your general vibe for today? Like, is there something that we can do to help you kind of recenter and be more present? Is it just like getting to see your friends? I love check-ins, and I think that they're so good for just like being together as a group of artists, which I'm going to get to later on as well as another part of this, but a feeling of ease is so important. And then for TTRPGs, the most important part of generating a feeling of ease around your table is, of course, safety tools. Exploring things that are deep and visceral and difficult are only fun if you feel held and safe to do so. And so if I'm going to step in and do something vulnerable and scary, having safety tools at my back and going, okay, we've already talked about how it's okay for me to do this. I'm not then feeling anxiety about like, hey, I'm going to say something kind of fucked up right now. I'm feeling at ease knowing that everyone is on board with the story that we are telling. And if they're not, they're going to tell me in a way that is clear and without judgment. So safety tools are actually a core part of being able to give a good performance in actual play and a good story in TTRPGs in general. So, the next one, feeling of form. The idea that the actor or performer has a body and exists in a space. We can expand this idea as we do not fully have to embody our TTRPG characters for the most part, and exist often in a limited space, either at a table or desk, and sometimes even just the camera frame. So one of the best things you can do is gain a grounded sense of yourself, your character, and the space that they inhabit, as well as where you are. So grounding exercise, again, like breathing, but also mindfulness and being centered in yourself, so that if your character is experiencing something heightened, you can always draw back into yourself. And you can go, I am a person in my own body. But also grounding exercises just to like be present in the moment, instead of going, I have to do grocery shopping later, I gotta make that phone call, oh, tomorrow I have this appointment, blah, blah, blah. Just be in the moment and like doing things, just like touching what's around you. One of the reasons I like having specific character dice is to like touch and be present with them. You can also look at and think consciously about your table mates, even if they're through a camera, and appreciating them as individual artists, the stories that they are bringing. You are being present in a physical space, even if it is a digital space, with your castmates, as a person, not as your character. And then having grounding tools such as fidgets, costumes, or just water. This, very helpful. Because if you haven't noticed, sometimes I forget I have a body and I forget to drink beverages. So having water is just to like, hey, I'm a person and I can take a pause from the scene and step out of the story long enough to take a drink and come back while still listening. So having a human person form in TTRPGs is actually very cool and unique in that you are not existing within the diegesis of the story that you are telling. The next one is the feeling of beauty. It is irrelevant to physical appearance, external looks, or attractiveness. It is an appreciation for the craft, art, story that you are creating. I often think of this as artistic euphoria. And all things that bring that artistic euphoria forward. There's a idea of radiance within Chekhov, and it isn't just about like radiating like, oh, like stardom. It's a lot of like radiating presence and being connected to the text and the work that you are doing. And I always kind of really tie this into the feeling of beauty specifically. So I often think of it as artistic euphoria, including when I'm doing terrible things in character that resonate with the truth of the story. So I'm pursuing an artistic end while doing something that is not pretty. It is not something beautiful in and of itself, but the act of me including in the story becomes beauty. The pure artistic pursuit of knowing the kind of art that you're making and why. In things like Laurie's house, where I'm like, this is strange art, but the stuff that we're doing within that is off the beaten path to me is so artistically joyful because it resonates back to the themes and the ideas behind the story. So you'll see that I just get deep into my poetry sauce in that show if you go listen to it, and I have no regrets. You are hearing my artistic euphoria of creating just whack-ass dream shit, and it's heavenly to me, and to me that is the like beauty of creating this art. And then another one that I think is very easily to me a core part of my TTRPG experience is gender euphoria. I feel such radiant joy and beauty about experiencing gender euphoria at the table, and I see it in other people, and it makes the whole experience more connective for me. Speaking of connective, the feeling of entirety, the feeling of artistic cohesion with what you're doing, who you're doing it with, and why. Things like mission statements, and then feeling like we're pursuing those ideals with things like the Chaos Protocol. Like I said, we did a charity. We did charity streaming on Saturday for hurricane relief in an arc that is entirely about climate disaster. Like, is one of the main themes. So like, not only having purpose within my art, as in I'm making art and it's beautiful and art is great to be made all on its own, but also then like pursuing a truth as a collective of artists, telling a story with other incredible artists with intention, sharing the space and oxygen all helps me feel very grounded so that I can then pursue a truth within my character instead of myself. So, the marriage of Chekhov and Stanislavski, physical action. Instead of digging into emotional memory, one of the things that kind of evolved out of these two thinkers, and it's attributed to Stanislavski, but it's clearly not just him because he also created emotional memory. It's a whole thing. But the idea, and this is true, of physically doing the actions that are associated with the internal feelings stimulates the brain and body to react. So this is not method acting. I am not saying do method acting. And I do think that if you are going to do this, you should approach it with care. But as a way to stimulate emotional resonance within the story you are telling, if you start to shake your hand and tremble, you will feel heightened anxiety because that is just a human reaction. If you start to breathe rapidly as if you are panicking, you can actually begin to panic. So this is when I say, like, approach with caution and care. Like, really take the time to learn about this, learn about yourself, and center yourself in what it means to do these things before pursuing them. But if you would like to pursue a more, like, distressed affect, breathing quickly is a really fast way to do that. If you clench your hands, like, really tightly, it actually does cause, like, a sense of anxiety or tension that is similar to where anger comes from, because anger itself is not, like, a singular emotion. It's not a root emotion. And then also, like, smiling gives you, like, good happy chemicals, and it makes your whole mood better. And so it's the psychology of physical action interacting with your body and your brain and allowing you to feel those things more. So if you're upset and you begin to heave a little, you're more likely to cry. That's just, like, how the body works. And so embodying your character's truth in those moments, even if it feels like fake acting, can actually stimulate the feelings if you pursue them like, more completely. So, question in chat: what is the actual definition of method acting? Indie Wanderer knows what it means by context, but no one has actually given a true definition. Method acting is the idea that you become your character without boundary. So, like, when I say, like, diegetic versus non-diegetic, the actor and the body of the actor and the needs of the actor exist outside of the story. It is non-diegetic. The character, their needs, and what they have going on exist entirely within the diegesis, within the story. And so it removes the need of non-diegetic stuff. So, like, you could never method act a god that doesn't eat because the human body has to eat. Lemmy is in the chat giving me incredible, delicious, actual information about anger. It can be a root emotion, but we tend to call it protest when it is the root. It seldom comes alone, even when it is the root. So interesting. Yeah, if you ever want to get really deep in the sauce, learn about root emotions. It's very fascinating. But to kind of finish this thought for Indie Wanderer, method acting is when someone seeks to embody their character all of the time or for long periods of time as a means of more authentically portraying that character instead of forming experiences and then letting them inform the actor in how to portray it within the story. I hope that helps. The line is usually like, do you treat your fellow castmates as their characters or as individual actors that are creating art with you? That's kind of where my boundary tends to be, because that's where all the really ugly stuff tends to live. Yeah, so physical action, very interesting. Again, if you do any of these, take time for aftercare for yourself, for your table, because it can really actually screw up your body. And cry when you drink a lot of water and keep tissues around you. I say as a person who loves crying when playing TTRPGs. Further adventuring. Play games. I know it's wild to say in a stream about people who play games to play games. Improv games are, of course, one of the like old standards of both theater warm-ups, but also I think it's something that we talk about a lot in actual play, where improv is a core part of it. But improv games do really help. Some improv games that I just happen to like, Zip Zap Zop, is really hard to do remotely, but it is very fun to do in person, where you're just connecting with your castmates. It's barely a game, it's more of a warm-up. Oh my god, Tarot Card Pull for Azra. We'll do that at the very end. So Zip Zap Zop is just you look at each other and you go zip, and then the next person goes zap, and the last one goes zop, and then you just keep passing it around until someone screws it up, either says the wrong one or is too long in passing it. But it is just like being hyper present with each other. One Word at a Time is a storytelling game where you tell a story where everyone says one word. It's very fun. TV Channels is more of a like improv, like a more traditional improv game of like one person has a remote and you like turn up the volume and everyone does the scene louder. You change channels to do it like a telenovela, do it like a game show, do it like, you know, all that stuff. And it gets everyone in the mindset of playing fun games. Getting to know you games is one of my favorite character generation methods. Playing games like Five Fingers or Never Have I Ever in character as your character is delightful. I also love Apples to Apples and that kind of stuff. Games that traditionally you would use to get to know other people, you can also use to get to know your characters. Eric has a question. Any tips for people who are neurodivergent and have a hard time figuring out where their feelings come from or have a delayed reaction to those feelings? So one of the core things for me is I love a writing exercise. And it's one of the ways that I go about like carefully exploring emotions. And it's one that when you write it, you might be able to find within that the emotion. And so things like in-character journaling for me kind of tends to help. In the moment, though, one of the things that I think I would advise for anyone who is neurodivergent, who specifically has that kind of emotional, the complicated relationship with like reaction times to feelings, is always take a moment when you can see that something is being heightened to check in with yourself and your character. Those two different things. How do I feel about this, to make sure you're being safe? But then also ask the question directly of your character. What emotion is my character feeling right now and why? And if the emotion is they're not feeling it yet, that is fair. You can be playing a neurodivergent character who has the same delayed reaction. So long as you are in tune with that and it is fun for you. It is not meant to be... No one should be expecting you to play a character outside of your experiences and way of thinking. So going, I don't think my character's experiencing this yet. Like I'm a lot quicker to my emotions than a lot of my characters. So I very consciously would be like, my character put this in a box and is going to deal with this later. Because I love an emotionally stunted character. But also you don't have to do it because you're emotionally stunted. You could do it because you're neurodivergent. Maybe you have a flat affect. Maybe your character has a different thing that they're worried about in the moment and compartmentalizes their feelings. Maybe like the list is very long, so don't be afraid to lean into those truths for your character as well. My last two further adventuring things is classes. Acting classes and voice acting are both really great tools in the tool belt of a performer. Acting classes will elaborate further on the concepts that I talked about today, and you can always root them back to your performance and your characters. And then voice acting will allow you to explore the depth and width and texture of your voice to portray your characters in a way that is fun and healthy for you, because sometimes people do voices that are hurtful to their throats, and sometimes you find, hey, maybe I can pitch my voice down significantly more than I realized and find fun gender euphoria in doing very deep-voiced cowboy slang. I don't know. It just happens. So voice acting is another way to pursue aspects of your character. And that's this week's presentation, everybody. I hope that was informative and fun. It was super fun to share that with all of you. If of course, if at any time you have questions or have subjects that you would like to see me further elaborate on, I'm always happy to receive it in my mailbox. Now we're going to do a quick tarot card pull for Azra. And I'm going to shuffle while I get ready to do that. And then, of course, all of this goes in tandem with all of my stuff about designing characters and the like nuanced details that you can put into costumes and things like that. Because I'll tell you what, that bachelor's degree that I have that I was talking about earlier is mostly in costumes, but I still studied a crap load of acting to get there because they go together. They are very, very related disciplines. Okay, Azra, we are shuffled. Let's go. We're gonna cut. And we're gonna... It's... What? Okay. I shuffled this significantly. For those of you who were not here earlier, I drew this card before break. This exact card. I'm... sure. Okay. Azra, the Daughter of Wands. A card about my baby girl. I will read it again. Daughter of Wands, visionary, passionate. The Daughter of Wands is a free spirit, a truly visionary creature. She usually waits until later to settle down or start a family as she's busy with her career. She can be stubborn and much stronger than she looks. As with all the Wands family, the daughter makes a dangerous enemy. This card can also represent a woman going through a transformation or spiritual breakthrough. That's interesting. So, yeah, congratulations on your steadfast. Apparently, the cards insist that you and Puck get the same card today. That you are either yourself or in relationship with someone or something in your life, a singular pursuit of vision and goals. Yeah, wow, okay. That's very strange. I really shuffled that deck. We're gonna have words later, deck. Anyways, wow. So, rest of the week. Tomorrow, I'll be back over on Wounded Warrior Project for more of the Fourth Age. This is, I believe, our midpoint episode for our final book. So you can come and see what happens when apparently all of Middle-earth has actually found hope and light to hopefully push back the darkness. And so that'll be at 12:30 p.m. Pacific, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time over on Wounded Warrior Project here on Twitch. It is a charity stream benefiting Wounded Warrior Project, and it's also full of just some of the most amazing storytellers ever. And then you can find me in the evening over on Happy Jack's RPG for more Road to Nowhere, an Electric State actual play. That show is coming slowly to its end as we reach the northern border of Pacifica, the once the state known as California. But we're coming to a very climactic ending over there, so come check that out tomorrow at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern Time for more of that. And then on Wednesday, I'll be back here for more Fallout New Vegas at 1 p.m. if it works. If you were here with me last week, you saw that it kind of broke and wouldn't fix. So I'm going to give it some test runs between today and Wednesday. And if it's not working, we're going to be playing some Fallout 4. And I'll show you more of my Zynon playthrough of Fallout 4. And then on Friday, I'll be over on Bad House RPG for Circle of Seekers and Sinners, a Candela Obscura game over there with Dan Pixel, who was in chat earlier, and some other amazing storytellers as we play Candela Obscura at the bottom of the ocean. Terrifying. And then on Saturday, we'll be back over on the Chaos Protocol with Transplanar RPG for more of Chaos and Arc 4, and me getting my ass absolutely handed to me. With so much love and so much fun in that process. So yeah, thank you all so much for hanging out. I hope that this was informative and a nice quick speed run through some acting theory. And if you're interested, you can always look up Stanislavski and Chekhov's. There's a lot of writing and scholarly like writing about their theory. There's also other amazing acting theory that all kind of branches off of these, so you can go check that out as well. And I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Until then, have a good night. Bye.